Hello Algebra 1. This video lesson is going to walk you through Chapter 5, which was all about linear equations. I am trying to help you prepare for the final exam, and the portion of the final exam that focuses on Chapter 5 and linear equations. I've given you a packet already with a bunch of practice questions. We've already worked through those practice questions in class. You've seen the answers, but this video walks you through how to solve some of those problems, not all, but basically one of each type. Starting with this first one here, you're asked to find the slope of the line. You're given 2 points. Well, first thing you have to remember is that m is the slope, and that slope is calculated by a formula, the change in y, or y2 minus y1, divided by the change in x, x2 minus x1. So plug those values in. 5 minus 14. Notice it's not 5 minus 0. Make sure you got those right, and make sure that the y's are these second points, second numbers in each point. So 5 minus 14 divided by 0 minus minus. Remember, this is a minus, but so is that. So minus minus 14. 5 minus 14, well, that's negative 9. 0 minus minus 14, well, that's plus 14, and your slope is negative 9 over 14. Like I said, I've given you practice problems. There are quite a few more of these that you can practice in those practice problems, and there are plenty more in the textbook if you want to practice this. Remember, in the back of the textbook, it gives you the answers to the odd-numbered problems. You can certainly expect to see and need to know how to find a question like this, how to find slope given 2 points. Next type of question that we talked about in the practice. If I give you a graph like this, you're supposed to be able to find the equation. Step 1, or A, as I've said here, is to figure out what the y-intercept is and what one other point on the graph is. Well, it looks to me, I wish I could zoom in here, but it looks to me like 0, 2 is that y-intercept. That's where the y-axis intercepts my line. Another point where it looks like it goes through what I keep calling the crosshairs is 3, 3. So now that I have that information, I've got 2 different points that the line goes through, and one of them is the intercept. B is I figure out what the slope is. Well, the slope is rise over run. It's change in y over change in x. The rise, well, I went down, or in other words, negative 5 steps, and then over 3. Negative 5 over 3, that's B, or the second step. I don't want to get you too confused because I use B in different ways in this video lesson. So the second step is to calculate the slope. Now I've got the slope. Remember, I do have the y-intercept. I already figured it out. There it is right there. It's 2. B, and this really is what I should be calling B, is 2. Now put those together in the formula, y equals mx plus b. And in y equals mx plus b form, m was negative 5/3. B, the y-intercept was 2. Don't forget that x. If you leave that x out, I'm going to have to take points off. A number of you keep leaving that x out. So there's my equation, there's my answer. Like I said, the review packet has quite a few more of these problems that you can practice. Graphing. If I give you the equation, you should be able to draw the graph. First step, identify and plot the y-intercept. Well, the y-intercept is that value right there, negative 3. So there it is, negative 3 plotted on the graph. Second step, figure out what the slope is. Well, the slope, it says here, m. Remember, y equals mx plus b. Well, m right there is negative something. Well, it has to be negative 1. Negative 1 times x. Well, negative 1 is the same thing as negative 1 over 1. Well, there's my rise over run. I go down 1 in order to go over 1. And that's how I've drawn my graph. There's my y-intercept at negative 3. I go down 1 and over 1. There's another point, and I draw a line through it. Next type of question is when I give you an equation in standard form instead of in y equals mx plus b form. When it's written like this, if you like y equals mx plus b better, you can translate this equation and turn it into y equals mx plus b. But this video lesson shows you how to use the cover-up method, which we've talked about quite a lot in class. The first thing we do is figure out what happens when y is 0. Well, I wish I could cover up that y, but imagine this y is covered up. It's going to say 3x equals negative 3. If 3x equals negative 3, then x equals negative 1. And I'm going to make a point on the x line here at negative 1. Here, I'll just go ahead and do that so that I don't forget. Okay, and then when x equals 0, so imagine this is now covered up, and it's going to say y equals negative 3. Okay, well, here's my y line. There's negative 3. And now, all I have to do is draw a line through those points. And that's the cover-up method. And that's what you use when you have standard form when x and y are both on the same side and you've just got a number on the other side. Okay, if I'm asked to write in the point-slope form, well, if I'm given a point in the slope, this is really easy. The point-slope form is that form, y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. So all I have to do is plug in. Well, there's my slope, negative 2/3. I put it in there. And my point, the x value is 3. I put that there. The y value in this case happens to be the same thing, also 3. I put that 3 there. And so there's my slope, negative 2/3. And now I've plugged my 3's in, and y minus 3 equals negative 2/3 times x minus 3. That's the equation in point-slope form. Now, if I give you the slope and the y-intercept, it's very easy to write the equation because remember, it's going to be in y equals mx plus b form. Put in 1/3 for m, negative 2 for b, and you've got your equation. If I give you a graph and I ask you to write the equation, I'm basically doing the same thing that I've done back here, going back here. I'm showing you the slope, and I'm showing you the y-intercept. The slope is negative 1/4. From here, I go down 1 and over 4 to go from one place that's in the crosshairs to another place that's in the crosshairs. The b, the y-intercept, is that first place I showed you here, 4. So if I've got those two pieces of information, there's my equation. Notice it's just built from the negative 1/4 and the 4 value. Word problems can do the same thing. They can tell you rather than show you what the starting amount, the intercept is, and the slope, the rate of change is. In this case, this baby gorilla's starting amount, its y-intercept is 17 pounds. Its rate of change, its slope, is 3/2. So, put that into the equation. Y-intercept is 17, slope is 3/2. And there's my equation, y equals 3/2 x plus 17. If I give you an equation, well, I've talked about this once before, but I'm going to go back through it. If I have to graph that, first thing I do is I identify the y-intercept. The y-intercept is that value right there, negative 4. And I plot it. The next thing I do is I figure out rise over run using the slope. My slope in this case is 2, or in other words, 2/1. So from this starting place, I'm going to go up 2 and over 1. And that's how I drew this graph. I started here at negative 4. I went up 2 and over 1. I had a second point, and I drew my line through it. If I give you the slope and a point, and I ask you to write the equation of the line, y equals mx plus b is the slope-intercept form that a lot of you like. I put the slope right in there in place of m. I don't know b this time though, but I do know y and x. I do know a y value and an x value that should work. I put 1 in for y, I put 2 in for x. Okay, now I've got to figure out what b is. 1 equals 3 times 2 plus b. 1 equals 6 plus b. Move this 6 over, and b is going to turn out to be negative 5. Now I do know what I needed on previous slides. I have the slope, and I have b. Put them both together, and there's my equation, y equals 3x minus 5. Please remember, at any point in this video, you can hit the pause button and look this through and make sure you understand what I've just shown and what I've just said. I'm going to move on as though you're ready for the next slide. If I give you 2 points, Well, now you don't have the slope or the y-intercept. You got to figure both out. Start by figuring out the slope. There's the formula for slope. I've plugged the values in. Minus minus 2 means plus 2. Minus minus 4 means plus 4. So this goes together to make 6 over 8. A simpler way to say that is 3 over 4. It's fine if you call it 6 over 8. I don't care which way you wrote it. So now your equation is going to be y equals 3/4 x plus b. Now this problem is the same as the one on the previous slide. And again, hit the pause button whenever you need to, but I'm going to whip through this. I'm going to put in either of these 2 points. It doesn't matter which one I put in. I just chose to put in 4, 4. That way I can avoid dealing with negatives. 4 equals 3/4 times 4 plus b. Notice these 4's are going to cancel, and it's going to become 4 equals 3 plus b. And you're going to find b turns out to be 1, and if I plug both these things in, 3/4 for m, 1 for b, and this is the equation I get. Next question. This is the translation work we talked about a lot. Rewriting or translating. Standard form is the form where y and x are on the same side, so I've got to move that 3x over. That's the standard form, ax plus by equals c. And I move the 3x over by subtracting it, so now it's negative 3x plus y equals negative 7, and that's it. That's the equation in standard form. Slope-intercept form is where y is by itself on one side and everything else is on the other. So I've got to move over the x. I've now left 2y here, but I've moved the x over. It's now negative x minus 14. Now I have to divide everything by 2. And an easier way to think of negative x over 2 is negative 1/2 times x. An easier way to think of negative 14 over 2 is negative 7. There's my equation. Again, hit the pause button wherever you need me to. I'm just going to keep moving right along. Translating into slope-intercept form. When I have point-slope form, got to get everything except y on the other side. But first, let's distribute that 7. So, well, actually, I guess I chose to move the 2 first. You can do that. I moved the 2 over here, but make sure the 2 stays outside the parentheses. Either way works. I'd forgotten I'd done it this way. Now I've got to distribute that 7. Negative 7 times x is negative 7x. Negative 7 times negative 2 is 14. Now I can put the 14 and the 2 together, and I get negative 7x plus 16 on the right, and y is by itself like I wanted it to be. Notice now I've got a slope, now I've got a y-intercept. Okay, last couple of questions. Here's the word problem that asks you to put the story in standard form. Well, remember standard form is that. The pieces that I have on the left, whoops, I didn't mean to do that. The pieces that I have on the left are going to add up to make a total. I know the total's $240, so that's what I'm going to have on the right. On the left, I'm going to have 4 times the number of sauces and 12 times the number of aprons. Together they add up to make 240. The last question was the one about a scatter plot. Unfortunately, I'm going to run up to the end of my video here, so I'm going to have to go faster than I'd like to, but I have to get this all done in 15 minutes. So the first question was to draw a best fit line. Well, I can't do that until I make the scatter plot. So I'm just going to show you the scatter plot. Here's the scatter plot, and I've gone ahead and I've drawn a best fit line. Now notice you can probably even see the one that I erased. For a while there, I thought the erased one was better. And you might have a slightly different one than the one I draw. That's not a big problem as long as they're close. So I'll show you the answers that I came up with. The equation of the line, well, the equation is going to be, put together the y-intercept 14, the slope negative 14 over 15, and there's that equation, negative 14 over 15 plus y-intercept of 14. If you convert this to decimals, negative 14 over 15 becomes that, and as long as you're relatively close to that, I give you full credit. Notice when the temperature is 8, there's 8. It looks like about 6 or 7. When the temperature is negative 4, I got to go way over here and way up there. The answer is 18. That's it. That's the end of the video lesson. Good luck on Chapter 5 on the final.